Am I on the right role? This is a question I get all the time, and honestly, I've felt it too. That stuck in limbo feeling where you're not sure if the role you're playing is the right fit. Maybe you feel like you could have been way more impactful in a different role, and maybe that role is the one you've been meant to play all along. And in today's video, I'm breaking down every role in Marvel Rivals, splitting each into two key subtypes to help you find the role that truly fits your playstyle. We will talk about what defines each role, the heroes that fall into them, and what you can expect when you lock them in. Let's dive in, and as always, thank you so much for the support. Let's kick things off with the Vanguards, the frontliners of Marvel Rivals. These are your tanks, your space makers, the heroes who wake up and choose violence, then eat enemy ultimates for breakfast. Their whole job and whole identity is to control space, protect a squad, and make sure objectives don't turn into a chaotic brawl. Think Magneto tossing out shields and barriers to lock down zones, Hulk turning anyone too bold into pace, or Captain America diving into the fray to scatter the enemy team. In Doctor Strange, he's out here blending melee and support, dishing out shields mid-combo like a wizard bouncer. As a Vanguard, your role is to initiate fights, soak up pressure, and keep the battlefield organized enough for your duelists and strategists to shine. You are the backbone, the foundation, and you set the tempo of every engagement, as well as being the last line of defense. Now, before we talk about the two different type of categories or subcategories of Vanguards, I want to first go over the general pros and cons. For pros, for Vanguards, you have massive impact. You control when and where fights happen. That's power. They're relatively beginner friendly because they have high HP, they have forgiving mistakes, and enough tools to survive messy fights. Following that, you set the pace. If you're on first point, odds are your team wins the fight. Seriously, stats back it up. First capture correlates to higher win rates. Now let's talk about our cons. The first con is that Vanguards are relatively team reliant. If your duelists are too busy chasing highlight clips across the map instead of following you up, you're just sat. Oversized punching bag. Another con that I find with Vanguards is that you're pretty underappreciated. Your strategist might ignore you to heal the 1 HP Spider-Man who dove the enemy spawn solo. Trust me, it's a rather tough life. You're also in a thankless world. You enabled a team, but they get the glory. The unsung hero, if you would say. Now, when you're picking the role of a Vanguard in Marvel Rivals, you have to think of Vanguard split into two different categories. The first category is the main Vanguard or the main tank. Then the secondary category is the off tank or the off Vanguard, however you want to describe it. Now, you might be sitting here that I'm missing some Vanguards like dive Vanguards or brawl Vanguards. Well, those are kind of lumped into the off role or the off tank Vanguards, but I want to first hone in to the main Vanguard role or the main tank role in Marvel Rivals. Now, when it comes to the main tank or main Vanguard, your primary role should be thinking about space control, frontlining, and damage absorption. When we think of core focuses, your main tanks are the foundation of your team's formation. Their whole identity or job is to absorb incoming pressure, anchor the frontline, and create a safe zone for duelists and strategists to operate behind. They don't just take damage, they shape the battlefield by denying enemy space, soaking cooldowns, and initiating or anchoring team fights. Now, when you think of the playstyle of main tanks tend to play closer to the objective, focusing on positional discipline rather than chasing eliminations. They are more stationary in comparison to your off tanks or your dive tanks, prioritizing holding space and choke points, blocking enemy angles of attack, body blocking for teammates, and drawing attention without dying. Good main tanks know when to push, when to hold, and when to bait. They are the frontline shot callers, your initiators, and your insurance policy. Now, when it comes to hero examples or characters that you should be thinking about in the main tank category, you want to think of heroes like Doctor Strange. He's a hybrid tank slash support who uses shields, portals, and AoE zoning to absorb pressure and protect his allies. In my opinion, his kit is ideal for mitigating burst and keeping his team stabilized while pressuring lots of space. Following that, another great example is Magneto, the king of space denial. He is a character with amazing damage, amazing protection with all of the shielding he has, the shield, the bubble, and his ultimate being probably the best ultimate in the game, I would say. You can easily challenge enemies on high ground, you can easily challenge enemies on objectives, and you really don't have to worry about getting eliminated because your strategist should be healing you properly, as you're probably the strongest thing to keep them alive. Now, the next main tank that I would kind of throw into the group is Groot. He's probably one of the tankier heroes in the game with, natural self-healing, crowd control, and a massive hitbox that makes him excellent at holding space, soaking ultimates, and stalling enemy dives. You could also throw Emma Frost as another candidate for a main tank, but I see her more as an off tank rather than a main tank, but I can see arguments for both ways. So if you're looking to pick up a main tank Vanguard or you think this role suits you, then I would highly encourage you to look at Magneto and Doctor Strange. Probably those two are my most played Vanguards and probably the most fun I have. Now, when you're playing the role of a Vanguard, you want to keep these key objectives in the back of your mind. The first one is you're the anchor to the fights. You want to be the stable presence your team can play around. Next, you absorb damage. You absorb tank cooldowns, you distract duelists, and trade your health to buy time. Following that, you can control space. Use your body, your abilities, and your positioning to deny key areas like doorways, stairs, and high ground. And one of your last, but certainly not least, key objectives is enabling your team. You soak pressure so your duelists can go for eliminations, and your strategist can safely heal or zone. Now, as a main Vanguard, you come with a lot of strengths. The first is you have strong team presence and survivability. You force enemy teams to commit resources to dislodge. Another strength is that you're essential for controlling objectives, especially in point-based maps like Domination Game Mode or even the Convoy Convergence. And I would say in terms of mechanics, you have lower mechanical demands in comparison to that of a duelist, but you do have higher strategic impact. But playing a main Vanguard doesn't come without its challenges. The first challenge is that you're heavily reliant on teammates following up. You can't necessarily carry alone, although sometimes it feels like you can. In reality and in play, can't really do that. Now, you're often ignored in terms of credit despite being extremely crucial and important to the team. Now, the stats might show that, you might be 6 and 8 or 6 and 10, whatever. It looks like you're having the worst game of your life. But if your duelists and strategists are playing amazingly well, that means you're doing part of your job. You're enabling your team, allowing them to get those eliminations, allowing them to pump out all of that healing. You are doing your job regardless of what people say in ranked. Now, one of the last challenges you'll face as a main Vanguard or a main tank is that it requires strong positional awareness and cooldown management. Characters like Magneto are heavily reliant on cooldown management, knowing when to time your bubbles, knowing when to time your shield, knowing when to time your ult. Look, it's a lot to manage, I get that. But all of that doesn't come without practice. Once you get that cooldown management done, the Vanguard role becomes a lot more easier. So what's the bottom line? Main tanks are the rock of the team. They might not always top the scoreboard, but they're often the reason the team is still standing. If you enjoy controlling the tempo of the game, enabling your team to shine, and surviving impossible situations while holding the front, this role is perfect for you. And if you're finding this video useful or entertaining in any way, shape, or form, or you just want to help out the channel in general, do me a favor, hit that like button and subscribe for more content on every other day. One of the best ways to help me out, and it really does make an impact. At 20,000 subscribers, we're doing a giveaway, so I definitely recommend subscribing. But anyways, back to the show. Now, as a off tank or off Vanguard, your primary role is disruption, flanking pressure, and cleanup. Your core focuses are off tanks are the aggressors and disruptors of the Vanguard role. Instead of necessarily anchoring the team, off tanks play off angles, look for an optimistic engages, and create chaos in the enemy backline. They are less about soaking damage and more about diverting attention, peeling threats, or collapsing on isolated targets with their team. Off tanks are ideal for punishing overextensions, diving backlines, and covering flexible parts of the map where certain main tanks can't reach in time. Now, when it comes to the playstyle of off tanks compared to main tanks, off tanks are more mobile, reactive, and independent. They thrive on timing, flanks, and map awareness, often coordinating with duelists to secure eliminations or force cooldowns out of strategists. The key is to strike when the enemy is vulnerable, whether that's interrupting a heal, catching a DPS out of positioning, or punishing squishies who overstep. You're a roaming threat, not a stationary wall. Now when it comes to off tanks, I like to also group dive vanguards, hybrid tanks all in the off-roll category as well, but they're just subcategories of off tanks. Now when it comes to hybrid or dive vanguards, I all put them in the same category of off tanks because they all share the same fundamental principles. That's why I'm not going to go super elaborate into all the other subcategories. You can kind of work it out for yourself in a way, and I already have tons of videos on vanguards as well, just so you get a better idea and you're not asking me why I didn't specify dive tanks or hybrid tanks or whatever. So when it comes to the hero examples of our off tanks or off vanguards, some of the basic or easiest ones to understand is Venom. He's a backline menace with high burst potential and strong sustain through his symbiotic resilience. Venom excels at punishing isolated targets, diving healers, and brawling 1v2 if need be. He's an off tank because he's there to really dive into the enemy backline and punish players who are on high ground so that your main tank like Magneto or Doctor Strange can carry a brunt of the force that's coming to his team. Now when I think of another hero example, I think of Hulk. While beefy enough to frontline, Hulk thrives and shines as an off-tank when used for aggressive dives and quick eliminations. His leap and punch combo lets him force duels or peel for teammates by slamming high-value targets. Now Captain America is a mobile brawler who can weave in and out of fights, disrupt enemy formations, and harass duelists with constant pressure. His shield throw and charge combo make him great for follow-up plays or punishing overextensions. He's another great off-tank if you want to play that role, and is definitely a character I highly recommend for Season 3. Now the key objectives that you should be thinking about as an off-tank is first disrupting the backlines. You want to dive strategists, displace enemies, or force them off high-value locations. Then you want to follow up fights. Collapse with your duelists to burst down targets after the main tank engages, or whoever else is engaging. Then you want to be looking to peel for your team. Use crowd control to protect your supports or shut down flanking enemies. Your main tank isn't necessarily able to peel because if they were to peel, they are turning their backs to the main enemy force. And by doing so, that's a quick way for your main tank to get eliminated quickly. So if your team is getting dived, you should be looking to peel instead of your main tank. Then last but certainly not least for your key objective is to create chaos. You want to split the enemy's focus and punish poor positioning. This is extremely true for characters like I said, for Captain America, Hulk, Venom. You can even throw Thing in there if you wanted to as well, all there to create chaos and just be an absolute menace. So the strengths as an off tank is that you're highly mobile and impactful in skirmishes. You can secure picks and help carry games with good mechanics. You have flexible positioning that allows for creative plays, and you also have strong dueling potential against most backline heroes. So playing as a good off tank gives your main tank a breath of fresh air and is something that's highly underappreciated. Now some of the challenges you may face as an off tank is that you're supposed to have less health or be a little bit squishier than main tanks, and you rely more on cooldowns and timings. Now you might be typing in chat or typing in the comments that that's not true. Captain America's unkillable. Venom's unkillable. Well, yes and no. In theory, Magneto and Doctor Strange has more survivability tools because they have the massive shield with the massive HP. Magneto has his extra bubbles for survivability. That's kind of the argument you could say between the two. But anyways, the other challenges you might be facing as a off tank is that you can overextend and die if you're not coordinated with your team. Very coordination heavy role. Following that, it's a little less forgiving for poor positioning. As a main tank, sometimes you can get away with overextending just a bit because you have the large HP bar, you have the survivability tools, but as an off Vanguard, like a Captain America or a Venom or a Hulk who dives into the enemy backline, if the enemy team has a Wolverine or a Winter Soldier, then maybe you might have overextended, you can get hooked, you can get grabbed and shredded down. Now, I'm not saying that's not possible to happen to a main Vanguard, but it's less likely. Now, as a off role or a off Vanguard off tank, you also need to have good map awareness and instinct for reading enemy movements so that you're always essentially one step ahead. But anyways, what's the bottom line? Well, off tanks are the wild cards of the Vanguard role, unpredictable, aggressive, and deadly in the right hands. If you like disrupting enemy plans, Flanking with a purpose and being the reason a duelist rage quits off tanks is your playground. Sometimes you'll feel like a second DPS with armor and crowd control, just remember you're still a Vanguard at the end of the day. This means helping the team, not solo queuing in your own personal highlight reel. Well, not all the time. But what do you think? Is the Vanguard role for you? Let me know in the comments down below. Do you like main tanks or are you a off-tank player? But now we move on to the role of the Duelist. Now moving on to the Duelist role or the damage role, your primary role is elimination, pressure, and snowballing team fights. The core focuses you should be looking at is that duelists are the mechanical stars of Marvel Rivals. Your job is simple on paper but hard in practice. Secure eliminations. Burst down priority targets and tilt the fight in your team's favor before it even begins. Duelists really thrive on punishing enemy mistakes, flanking to hit vulnerable supports, and turning clean shots into fight wins. Now again, just like the Vanguard role, I like to split the Duelist role into two different categories. The first category is your Hitscan Duelist. These are players who focus on Hitscan characters and hone their skills on aiming. Then your other category is Flex DPS in the Duelist section. But anyways, let's start off with our Hitscan DPS or Hitscan Duelist. So when it comes to the role of a Hitscan Duelist or Hitscan damage dealer, your primary role is precision eliminations, mid to long range pressure, and mechanical carry potential. The core focuses is Hitscan Duelists are the sharpshooters of Marvel Rivals. Your shots land the instant you click, meaning every flick, every beam, every bullet is a test of your raw aim. These heroes excel at mid to long range engagements, melting squishies and controlling space through sheer mechanical threat. Your job isn't just damage, it's to delete high value targets, farm cooldown, and punish positioning errors instantly. Now when it comes to the playstyle of a Hitscan Duelist, you want to play the battlefield like a tactician with a trigger finger. You're constantly evaluating sightlines, finding angles, and tracking movement to line up high value shots. You're not necessarily built for sustained brawls or aggressive dives unless supported. Instead, your power comes from poke pressure, finishing low HP targets, and bursting enemies before they can react. Now, I split Duelists into two categories, both Hitscan Duelists and Flex Duelists, mainly due to the fact that Hitscan Duelists are highly mechanically intensive, and your sole and only focus should be on those Hitscan Duelists. The second you start flexing around, you kind of lose your touch on the Hitscan aspect because, again, it takes a lot of mechanical and raw skill. So if you really want to be a high level Hitscan Duelist, I recommend doing aim training. I know it's not the nicest thing you want to hear in the world, but if you do want to grow in that aspect, I highly encourage you to do aim training, whether it's aim labs or Kovacs, or just really practicing those characters. Now, when it comes to the Hitscan Duelist, positioning is everything. You live just outside of danger, holding angles that force enemies to either respect your sightlines or eat critical damage. Now, your hero examples for Hitscan Duelists, I mean, they're pretty obvious. The first one is Punisher, a pure aim check hero with a high-powered rifle, low margin for error, and massive kill pressure and good hands. You also have characters like Hela, who can easily solo carry games if the Hela is good enough. You also have the new duelist Jean Grey, or Phoenix, who is another Hitscan hero who thrives in the right hands of a mechanically talented or gifted player. Now, the key objectives of this Hitscan role is to burst squishies, exploit windows when enemy supports or duelists peek out of position. You want to control angles, use your range to make enemies think twice about walking into open space. You then want to finish priority targets, land final hits on low health, enemies trying to escape. And you're always looking to apply constant pressure. You want to force cooldowns and keep enemy strategists always on the back foot. Now, when it comes to the strengths of a Hitscan Duelist, you have mechanical carry potential. That is, great aim wins fights, full stop. You have consistent pressure. No projectile delay means you can punish instantly. That's the difference between a character like Hela, who has instant damage, versus a character like Winter Soldier, a Squirrel Girl, a Moon Knight. You have instant, consistent damage. You also have high skill expression. Whether it's landing crits, maintaining headshots, or tracking fast targets, you can visibly improve every game. You also have versatile engagements. Depending on the hero, you can poke from range or burst up close. For example, you have Hela, who can do mid to long range, but a Hela can also get up close, use her E ability, which is the stun that kind of sucks people into the middle, and instantly delete someone with 2 quick headshots. Now comes the challenges you may or may not face when it comes to this Hitscan role. Now, one of the challenges you may face when it comes to the Hitscan hero is mechanics. It's kind of a double-edged sword. It's both your strength and kind of your weakness, because you have to think of it in a way like this. Your value scales with your aim. Low accuracy means low impact. For the most part, you're usually vulnerable to dives. Your weak defensive tools means positioning mistakes are fatal. This is true for some of the Hitscan heroes like Punisher, but when it comes to the other heroes like Phoenix or even Hela, that's not necessarily an issue. But besides that, you typically have low sustain. You often need your supports to survive extended fights or peel dive threats. And this is certainly true when you have, your Luna Snow, snowflaking the Hela or the Phoenix or the Punisher, or you have an invisible weapon placing their right click shield for the Hela, for the Phoenix to take those off-angle fights. So this is certainly true. And believe it or not, another challenge you might face is that these Hitscan heroes are very team coordinated. Without a proper frontline to make space or pillars to keep you alive, you'll get overwhelmed quickly. A majority of the time, your Hela or your Phoenix, you need to be in an off-angle spot to get the most amount of value. I'm not saying you always need to, but majority of the time you should be in those off angles. And if you don't have that frontline to pressure the enemy team back, so you can get into those off angles, it might be a little bit hard to, pull off eliminations to really show your talent. But what's the bottom line? Hitscan duelists are aim monsters. The mechanical ceiling is high, and so is the reward. If you come from other shooters and have strong tracking, flicking, or crosshair placement, this is where you're typically going to shine. For the most part, you get to be the one controlling engagement, punishing mistakes, and finishing fights. But be warned, if you can't land your shots, the role punishes you hard. You don't necessarily get to blame your cooldowns. Your impact is directly tied to your mechanics and awareness. However, if you're up for the challenge, Hitscan Duelist might just be the most satisfying role in the entire game. Nothing beats landing 2 headshots as a Hela, or a Jean Grey, or even a Punisher tracking perfectly. Nothing beats that. Very satisfying and very nice. Now, the next category of the Duelist role is your Flex Duelist damage role. Your primary role is versatility eliminator, playmaker, and adaptive threat across all ranges. Your core focuses are Flex Duelists are essentially the Swiss Army knives of the damage role. Your value doesn't come from just one weapon type, it comes from your ability to switch playstyles, counter specific threats, and fill the gaps your team needs mid-match. You might start the game on a character that has a lot of poke damage, then you might need to swap to some type of melee character or a dive character, and then finish with a burst projectile hero to close out fights. You win through adaptability. You're not necessarily locked into one identity, you become whatever your team needs to win. Now, your strength as a Flex Duelist comes from your ability to essentially read the room. You're comfortable with flankers, poke, or close range scrappers depending on the matchup. Some fights you're hanging back with Iron Man or Torch for precise zoning. Other times you're diving in with Panther or Psylocke for backline assassinations. You understand map geometry, role synergies, and enemy weaknesses, and you're always one step ahead in the hero select. You're not just necessarily good at aiming, you're good at making the right decision before the fight even starts. Now, your hero examples are characters like Black Panther, a melee burst assassin perfect for punishing isolated targets. Storm, hybrid projectile user with excellent poke and mobility. You also have Psylocke, fast mobile backliner killer with high carry potential. You also have Human Torch, Iron Man, a ton of these other flex DPS. You can even throw Winter Soldier in there as you want to. These characters aren't necessarily reliant too heavily on aim and more about positioning and awareness versus, again, the Hitscan Duelists who are all about raw mechanics. Your key objectives as a Flex Duelist is to adapt to the win condition. You want to switch heroes or playstyles to counter dive, to counter poke, or to counter bunker comps. Whether it's swapping to maybe no more, swapping to something to counter poke, maybe you need to break a bunker comp, and that's a pick like Squirrel Gore or even Moon Knight. All these are perfect answers. kind of like the Hitscan Duelist, you're all there about punishing priority targets, be wherever the squishies are vulnerable and end them. You also want to exploit map geometry, and what I mean by that is you want to abuse verticality, flanks, and off angles to make space or secure eliminations. And you always want to be looking to balance risk and reward. Know when to duel, when to peel, and when to poke from safety. In terms of your strengths, you have a high carry ceiling. You can dominate any matchup when your hero swaps are on point. You have map and comp flexibility. You're never out of options, you adapt better than anyone. If they need a Squirrel Girl, you're the person. If they need a Winter Soldier, if they need a Black Panther, if they need a Human Torch, you're all that person. You also have matchup control. You counterpick enemy duelists or supports without needing a full comp swap. And you're also macro strength. You're a great flex duelist, understands not just mechanics, but timing, space, and win conditions. Now, there are a lot of challenges when it comes to being a flex DPS. First is that you have the jack of all trades pressure. You're expected to know multiple heroes at a high level. Weaknesses on any one can cost fights, and that is certainly true. When you're playing a flex DPS, all of your heroes that you're trying to flex to have to be on the same level. Whether it's playing a Human Torch, a Winter Soldier, a Psylocke, a Black Panther, they all have to be at the level of your rank. If you're an Eternity player, swapping to those roles you have to feel confident and comfortable on. If not, it's kind of a waste. And like I was stating previously, the other challenge is execution burden. Being flexible isn't useful unless you can play at a high level on every pick. You also are kind of a decision overload. Constantly swapping, repositioning, and playstyle shifting demands high mental load. Yes, this is certainly true. You're also pretty team synergy dependency. You have to adjust around your team's frontline and support play, sometimes giving up your preferred playstyle for the win. Sometimes you don't want to swap off that Winter Soldier or the Human Torch, but if your team needs it, because you're that flex DPS or in that flex role, you have to swap to make the lives of everybody else's easier. It can be stressful at times, but the reward is definitely worth it. So what's the bottom line? Flex duelists are essentially the glue players who turn strong comps into dominant teams. You don't necessarily just lock in your favorite hero and force it. You pilot that works, read the match, and exploit enemy gaps with the right hero at the right time. And honestly, it's the most strategically demanding version of the damage role, but it also gives you the most freedom to play the game essentially your way. If you love switching styles, mastering matchups, and carrying with both brains and mechanics, Flex Duelist is just in your lane. Just be ready, the pressure's always on you to make the right call. And that's the Duelist role. If you think the Duelist role is the right fit, whether it's the Hitscan Duelist or the Flex Duelist, let me know in the comments down below and what your favorite Duelist is. Now, when it comes to the Strategist role or the Support role, your primary role is the Fight Controller, Team Enabler, and Tempo Dictator. And again, just like the other roles of Vanguard and Duelist, strategists, in my opinion, are split into two categories. You have your main strategist and you have your off-strategist or secondary strategist or supports, whatever you want to call it. Now, your core focuses as a strategist is that you are the brains and the backbone of any team and Marvel Rivals. You don't just heal or shield, you orchestrate the entire battlefield. Whether you're healing your backline, healing your tanks, locking down zones, sustaining the frontline, everything you do shifts the momentum of the match. Now, moving to our first category, we have the main strategist or your primary healer role. The whole idea is the team anchor, the sustain provider, and fight stabilizer. Your core focuses are often referred to as a main healer and the lifeline of your team. Your role isn't just keeping teammates alive, it's about controlling the flow of engagements, mitigating enemy pressure, and creating an environment where your duelists and vanguards can thrive. You are the one who stabilizes chaos and ensures your team doesn't collapse when things go wrong. While duelists have their aim and vanguards charge in head first, you calculate, you track enemy cooldowns, anticipate dives, and keep your team in the fight long enough to win it. Your playstyle revolves around smart positioning, precise cooldown usage, and in the moment prioritization. You juggle healing, peeling, and shot calling, all while being a high priority target. Main strategists aren't flashy, but they are the reason fights last longer than 6 seconds. You hold the backline, maintain vision on your team, and operate like a central command post. Your decisions influence who lives, who dies, and when it's time to engage. Now, our hero examples of our main strategists or main healers are pretty self-explanatory. The first one, Luna Snow. Strong single target and AoE healing with range poke and solid survivability. You also have Cloak and Dagger, excellent healing with a ton of damage potential, a ton of impact in terms of her blinding cape, her invincibility with her right click, and the list goes on and on. You also have characters like Invisible Woman. And in my opinion, those are your main strategies. You might be wondering, why is Loki not up there? He usually has the most healing in the game. Well, I base main strategists off of their ultimates. Those three are the only ones with a real defensive ultimate. Yes, you have Mantis, you have, Rocket, but those healing numbers don't add up to those three main strategists. Now, your key objectives as a main strategist or main healer is to keep your team alive. Prioritize heals where it matters most. Frontlines during a push, backline under dive pressure, and of course, you always want to anchor team positioning. Stay alive and centered so allies can rotate around you. Ult timing and tempo control. A good healer ult can shut down a team wipe or swing a lost fight. You can also counter enemy initiation, pre-position utility to not dives, flanks, or zone breaks. Whether it's placing your shift as Invisible Woman to knock a flyer out of the sky, blinding enemies with the Terror Cape as Cloak and Dagger, or just getting that snowball out early as Luna Snow could save the fight or save, you guys getting wiped. Now, the strengths of a main healer is sustained dominance. When you're alive and focused, your team becomes nearly unkillable and untouchable. Also, you have fight consistency. Even in chaotic skirmishes, your presence brings stability. You can also have impact without mechanics. You win fights through awareness, tracking, and decision making, not flashy aim. You also have a team value amplifier. A good healer turns average teammates into unstoppable threats by continuously healing. Usually the unsung heroes are just like Vanguards. Now, the challenges are few, but in terms of what they are, they're pretty heavy. You have high pressure and low forgiveness. Every missed heal or poor ult can cost the fight. That's where stress and things like that comes to strategists. You do have limited damage. Your personal frag potential, unless you're Luna Snow, is low. Your power is enabling others. Again, unless you're Luna Snow, because that character does a little too much damage. Now, playing as strategist also has positioning demands. You are the #1 dive target and must master spacing to survive. You're also hyper dependent on allies. If teammates overextend or ignore peel, you are going to suffer greatly from it. But with all that being said, what is the bottom line? Main strategists are the spinal cord of the team, keeping everything connected, responsive, and alive. You don't chase highlights, you enable them. You aren't the loudest player in the fight, but you're always the most essential. Whether you're holding the line in a losing push or turning a lost team fight into a full team comeback, you are the reason your team gets a second chance. If you love playing the long game, reading the battlefield, and being the silent MVP, then the main strategist or main healer is definitely your calling. Now, when it comes to the off healer or the off strategist, the flex support role, you are the tempo shifter, utility playmaker, and DPS hybrid. Off healers are the glue between fraggers and anchors. You are not the team's main lifeline. You are the momentum adjuster, the clutch saver, and the extra edge that turns a decent team into a dangerous one. You bring value through flexibility. Whether it's burst healing, zoning, crowd control, or burst damage, you fill the gaps when your team can't cover alone. Where a main healer stabilizes, you disrupt. You peel flankers off of your strategist, punish dives with burst combos, and swing fights with well-timed cooldowns or ults. Your strength lies in adaptability. You want to think of off-healer play as a strategic aggression. You have to float between backline defense, midline pressure, and the occasional frontline push. You often less heal focus than your main support counterpart, but your toolkit brings playmaking value that they lack. Your job changes every few seconds. One moment you're peeling for Luna, the next you're diving in with Panther to secure an elimination or zoning a choke with AoE. Good off-healers don't just support, they force mistakes. And when you're diving, I'm talking about like a Mantis diving with a Black Panther. Sometimes that is doable, and I've tried it before, and it works pretty well, I would say. So what is the hero examples for this off-healer role? Well, literally, it's every single character in the strategist line that isn't one of the three. Luna, Invis, Cloak, and Dagger. All of the other strategists are off-healers in my opinion, because their healing is a little bit less than the main healers. Yes, Loki is an off-healer. I'm not going to sit here and argue with you. He doesn't have a defensive ultimate if you think about it. He just has the ability to copy, but he is still a very, very good strategist if he's open. So whether you're picking Ultron, you're picking Atom for extra damage and dive survivability, or you're picking a Rocket to get that res beacon, to get that extra healing amp, those are all your off-healing characters. So what are our key objectives? You want to support with impact. You're not necessarily healing full-time. You're making the fight easier to win by removing pressure points. You want to peel and punish. Help your main strategist survive dives and punish anyone who overextends. This comes from characters like Adam Warlock, from Mantis, from Loki, from Ultron that they can do a ton of damage, and they have tools to help your main strategist survive dives. You also swing fights. Your utility or damage should either win a trade, stop a flank, or force a cooldown. You want to plug the gaps. Fill in whenever you're complex. Zoning, burst heals, cleanse, mid-range pressure, etc. It's all great examples. Now, as a off-healer, off-strategist, whatever you want to call it, your strengths are few but many. You have high versatility. You can flex into different playstyles depending on the comp and situation. You have fight-turning cooldowns. Your abilities can swing fights when used reactively or proactively. Whether it's an Adam Warlock Soulbond, you Soulbond, then run in as a team, everybody's linked up, using your regeneration domains as Loki to save yourself and your team from, game-changing ultimates, things like that. You also have some pretty disruptive playmaking. You thrive in chaotic fights by peeling or diving as need be. Again, the diving is kind of niche. It's really with the Mantis, I would say. And when it comes to playing an off-healer, you should be looking to synergize well with every role. You're the ideal partner for the dive comp, poke comp, or sustain health brawls. Now, the challenges of a off-healer or an off-strategist or, a secondary healer is you have low sustain healing. You can't carry a team's health bar solo. You have poor synergy with your main strategist when people get eliminated. Positioning is a little bit harder. You're in the middle of every lane, vulnerable to snipers, flankers, and brawlers alike. And you also don't have a clear role in bad comps. If your team lacks coordination or doesn't understand your job, your value can feel pretty lost. So what's the bottom line? Off-healers are the playmakers of the backline, not defined by raw numbers, but by impactful decisions. You don't need to top healing charts or be amazing in the elimination feed. Your value shows in how safe your allies feel, how often enemies misplay, and how your cooldowns create windows to win. If you love being the clutch factor, the gap feeler, and the chaotic force that makes teams better, the off-strategist role is where you're going to shine. You're not necessarily the main character, but you are the reason they live long enough to write the story. What type of strategist are you, the main healer or the off-healer? But anyways, hopefully this video has helped you in any way, shape, or form to give you a better understanding of what role you want to play in Marvel Rivals. This video was made by a commenter's suggestion, so make sure to comment down below if you want to see any types of other videos. Do me a favor while you're at it, hit that like button, subscribe if you're new or you just enjoy the show in general. It greatly helps out the channel and keeps me going. But regardless, I hope you have a great and safe day, and I'll catch you in the next one.